Kaido and Big Mom might still not be done in the story. There are in fact some signs that are slowly accumulating over the course of Elbaf that indicate that Oda may still have a bit more use for these two characters when the final war begins. And though it's unlikely that we will ever see either of them again at full strength, with the direction One Piece is currently heading, it's possible that we may see a version of each of them in the final saga. The reality is that Kaido and Big Mom are at the very least likely not actually dead right now, and we know that Oda loves to bring back past villains later on in the story to continue to play smaller roles. And most importantly, there is one huge upcoming event in Wano that may actually free these two characters, and there is in fact a simple purpose that each of them could be set up to play in the final saga. I am not trying to tell you that either of these characters are going to be coming back. I'm just going to show you several red flags that seem to suggest that this could legitimately be a surprise comeback that Oda is setting up. So before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to have a top-of-the-line VPN that's also cheaper than every other major VPN, well, Surfshark, the sponsor of this video, is allowing my viewers to use it for less than $3 a month. That's right, most major VPNs are $15 a month, but for my viewers, you can get Surfshark for less than $3. And you can keep that price for up to 2 years. And if you get it right now, you can get an extra 4 months free. The best part is, if you're not sure about Surfshark and you just want to try it out, you can do that risk-free, since my viewers also get a 30-day money-back guarantee. And in case you don't know what VPNs are, most people use VPNs when they go online nowadays, because VPNs secure your data so that whatever you are doing online cannot be tracked. And you can change your location online to anywhere you want on the planet. You can get access to anime that's only streaming for free in Japan, or access to sports like football, tennis, or cricket that are only streaming for free in other countries. So get your Surfshark deal today for less than $3 a month. Just go to surfshark.com/Morge or use code Morge for 4 extra months of Surfshark free, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Link in the description below, or just scan the QR code. So that aside, to begin with, there are already a lot of red flags surrounding a potential Big Mom return. Now let me be clear, I do not want Big Mom to return. I do not think that any sane One Piece fan would say that after experiencing Big Mom as a primary antagonist for 230 chapters straight, from Whole Cake Island all the way through Wano, that anyone wants any more of this character. But that's precisely why I am genuinely worried about all the small signs that seem to indicate that Oda may still somehow not be done with this villain. To begin with, it's easy to forget now, but for years, readers generally assumed that Big Mom would be a huge deal in the Elbaf arc, and that Big Mom's story could not conclude until Elbaf. This was of course because Big Mom's backstory took place in Elbaf, and her backstory set her up as the sworn enemy of the Giants. This also led to her long and checkered history with the Giants, with her scheming to make them part of her army through marriage, and eventually coming to hate them as the only race that she deliberately left out of Totoland. For a long time, it seemed like Big Mom's story with the Giants needed closure, but of course Big Mom was defeated by random TNT before that could happen. Now, was this genuinely the end of Big Mom? Right off the bat, there was a major sign that this may not be the case. Literally, as Big Mom was going down, she explicitly said, "Don't assume that this will be enough to kill me." This could be just chalked up to salty final words, but it is a little odd, considering generally in One Piece, anytime a major villain is defeated, Oda tends to imbue a sense of finality to it. The villain is usually completely knocked out and broken, whereas with Big Mom, she's fully conscious all the way down and is swearing retribution. On top of this, while we see Big Mom seemingly unconscious in lava later on, it doesn't seem like she's dead, as her homies all still seem to be alive even after her defeat. Remember, in general, Devil Fruit users' abilities tend to stop after they've been defeated, as we've seen with Gecko Moria's zombies, Sugar's toys, and Doflamingo's birdcage. But Big Mom's abilities persist despite her defeat, suggesting that either her fruit is a major exception to the rule, or she's not dead but is simply in a severely weakened state. Narratively, Big Mom has also been referenced multiple times in recent arcs, with Pudding talking about what would happen if Big Mom were here. And even now in Elbaf, we are getting references to past battles between the Giants and Big Mom, as that is apparently how this shield homie was created. And interestingly, this battle could not have been from when Big Mom was a child on Elbaf, as Big Mom did not have her fruit at that time. So there is, even now, some extended history to be uncovered between Big Mom and the Giants of Elbaf. But at the end of the day, does any of this definitively mean that Big Mom will return? No, these are all very, very small factors individually. However, one thing that has become more and more common in One Piece is Oda bringing past defeated villains back into the story, and generally speaking, the more significant the villain is, the more likely it seems that they will be brought back. We saw this of course with Crocodile, who became a major player in the Impel Down and Marineford storyline, and who then went on to become a major independent force in the New World, and who has finally taken center stage again as the mastermind behind Cross Guild. We saw this with Lucci, who is now active in the New World as CP0, popping up again in Dressrosa, the Reverie, and most notably even getting to be a major arc villain again in Egghead Island, getting rematches against Luffy and Zoro. Buggy has of course continued to play a gigantic role in the story ever since Impel Down, and even Moria seems to have returned with an ongoing plotline, having apparently actually escaped Hachinosu. Now these are all pre-timeskip villains, but we've also seen that even post-timeskip villains from past arcs have started to be brought back into the plot, with Caesar and Judge now forming Neomads and getting their new plotline. So with Big Mom's final words promising her return, with so many references to Big Mom in recent arcs, with the fact that Big Mom's story always seemed to have connections to Elbaf that never really became relevant, and the fact that Oda doesn't seem to have killed her off, and Oda tends to find new plotlines to bring back past major villains, honestly there is a genuinely decent possibility that Oda is still not done with Big Mom, and that she may be making her return one way or the other. But so far I've been talking about Big Mom and not Kaido. Why do I believe it's possible that both could make their return? Well, to begin with, Kaido and Big Mom were always presented as duo villains for so long that I believe it's more likely that both are released as a pair rather than just Big Mom, especially considering Big Mom is nowhere near as popular of a character as Kaido. On top of that, even though Kaido was defeated much more emphatically than Big Mom, and Kaido sustained significantly more damage over the course of the Onigashima battle, ultimately Kaido is a Zoan, which means he also should have significantly better recovery than Big Mom. It's also unlikely that Kaido actually died, as Oda never has Luffy kill villains, as it's more impactful if Luffy crushes the villain's dream instead, and in Kaido's case that counts doubly so, as part of Kaido's dream is literally to die in a great battle, seemingly preferably at the hands of Joy Boy. So by Oda's logic, there's no chance Kaido actually got what he wanted here, dying in a great battle to Joy Boy, and it is more likely that Kaido has instead just been left to perpetually burn alive in the depths of Wano. So essentially it's unlikely Big Mom is truly dead based on her final words and the fact that her homies are still alive, and it's unlikely that Kaido is actually dead considering his own durability, his Zoan fruit, and just thematically how Oda tends to write the defeat of villains to Luffy. As such, on the surface it seems like Oda may have simply come up with this lava prison as a way to write Kaido and Big Mom out of the story without actually killing them. But that doesn't mean Oda actually wants to bring them back, right? Well, I would agree, but there is one major upcoming event that would also very possibly set up for their release. That is the destruction of the borders of Wano country. This is an event that seems guaranteed to take place very, very soon, as this was spelled out for us at the end of Wano. Wano is housing a dangerous secret in its depths, and that is of course the ancient weapon Pluton. The true structure of Wano reveals that the massive land walls surrounding the island have hidden away Pluton and the rest of the country far below. When these borders are destroyed, Pluton can finally be released, meaning that at some point, sooner or later, Wano is going to be drastically physically altered. The entire land will soon be reshaped. We always knew that the borders would be destroyed, and we knew that Pluton has to be released, so the geography of the land will change, and Pluton is very possibly not the only thing that will be unearthed when that time comes. There are two Yonko who are also buried in Wano's depths, and who are both very likely alive, just waiting to be released back into the world, much like the ancient weapon. This is especially possible considering how Pluton is likely to be released. See, I've explained in multiple videos in the past why it is very, very likely that Blackbeard is the character who will ultimately break the borders of Wano and seize Pluton for himself. While you can click on these videos after this for a far more detailed explanation, the simple fact is that Oda wrote an extremely extensive plotline for Caribou spanning 500 chapters just to get the information of the ancient weapons, specifically to Blackbeard. Oda has made it clear that Blackbeard was interested in this information, and Oda has set up Pluton's location so that literally Blackbeard, and only Blackbeard, can unleash it from the Wano depths. Pluton is buried under the sea surrounded by giant walls of land. Oda literally gave Blackbeard the fruit that is designed to destroy large masses of land. Blackbeard has the literal earthquake fruit, the one fruit that makes it so that he, and he alone, can roll up to Wano and break down the barriers that have been set up. And keep in mind, there is literally no reason Blackbeard wouldn't do this the moment that he hears about Pluton's location. Because remember, Blackbeard literally led a raid on Amazon Lily just for Boa Hancock's fruit. and Boa Hancock's fruit is nowhere near as valuable as the ancient weapon of mass destruction that could make Blackbeard the ruler of the world. There is a very clear upcoming series of events. Blackbeard will hear about Pluton's whereabouts, Blackbeard will roll up to Wano to take the ancient weapon, Blackbeard will unleash his earthquake ability to tear down the borders of Wano and release Pluton out into the world, exactly as we were told will happen. And in the process of Blackbeard rocking Wano with an onslaught of earthquakes, this also seems like it could easily set up for Kaido and Big Mom's release. Right now, they are both buried under the earth. Earthquakes would be the perfect mechanism to break them out. As Blackbeard racks Wano with earthquakes, the land underneath Wano could easily crack and split open as the two Yonko, now somewhat recovered a few weeks after their defeat, emerge back to the surface. Or the earthquakes could trigger a volcanic eruption that could launch the two Yonko out as well. Now, if these two Yonko were released, I am definitely not saying that they will reform their old crews and return to the story as emperors. If they were to be released, then the three options I see are either them becoming individual wildcards that will have to be dealt with in the final war, or potentially having their damaged bodies captured by either the world government or Neomads to be turned into weapons. Or finally, the possibility of even being recruited directly by Blackbeard as an ally. If we look at Blackbeard's predecessor, Rox, he assembled a crew composed of extraordinarily powerful individual pirates. And Kaido and Big Mom were of course two of the most notable names on the original Rox crew. Considering Blackbeard is following in Rox's footsteps, is it possible that he releases the two Yonko, who are likely in a weakened state, and negotiates to bring them into an alliance with him? We already know Blackbeard is comfortable recruiting characters who are his equals, as we've seen with Aokiji, as Blackbeard is likely cunning enough to already be planning ahead on how to deal with them later. But first, we have a huge announcement. The end is here. The World of One Piece Travel Poster Collection is finally at its conclusion. And so for the grand finale, we are opening up all the previous islands from the World Tour back for you this month so you can complete your collection, along with the final batch of islands you can get for your walls: Baratier, Arlong Park, Lobetown, and Windmill Village. And for this grand finale, this month you can even pick any 4 posters you like from the entire collection and get all 4 of them for 50% off. If you're trying to catch up to the entire travel poster collection and there are just too many to choose from, you can even get the complete World of One Piece bundle and pick and choose 15 travel posters to get them at an even bigger discount. With this, the entire story of One Piece is complete. All the major islands we've seen throughout the story are available this month with major discounted bundles, so make sure to get your travel posters today. But regardless of what allegiance Kaido and Big Mom end up with post-release, the bigger question you may have is why? What exactly would be the point of Oda bringing back Kaido and Big Mom at this point? Well, at the end of the day, the very reason I'm talking about this possibility is for one very simple speculative reason. There is currently a very large faction of potential Final War allies for the Straw Hats who are not going to have anyone to fight. This may sound silly, but Oda is setting up a gigantic Final War, and we know that Oda ultimately likes to have as many of his protagonists as possible get their own fights. We've seen this in recent major battles. The Dressrosa arc concluded with not just the Straw Hats getting fights, but practically all of the Straw Hats' new allies got their own matchups in the big finale. Similarly, we saw this on a larger scale in Wano. It wasn't just the Straw Hats getting matchups, there were countless other allied characters at Onigashima, and so we saw everyone getting their fair share of the action. Kid and Law got to fight Big Mom, Marco got his own fight against King and Queen, Inuarashi vs Jack, Nekomamushi vs Perospero, Kiku vs Kanjuro, even Raizo vs Fukurokuju, and Izo vs CP0. When Oda sets up these large-scale battle scenarios with huge allied forces of protagonists, he does try to make sure that there are enough fights to go around. Now, when looking at the potential big final war with all the upcoming final battles, if we were to quickly separate out protagonists and antagonists, then between the main villain groups, the Blackbeard Pirates and the Celestial Dragons, there should be enough matchups to go around for the primary protagonists: the Straw Hats, the Revolutionaries, maybe even the red-haired pirates, especially if we imagine a chunk of Marines may still be antagonists. The primary matchups between all the key players is a far more elaborate video that I'll be breaking down in the future. Looking at the rest of the Straw Hat allies, there is a large chunk of strong characters who are actually somewhat difficult to place. For example, look at the entire nation of Wano, with Yamato and all the mighty samurai. We already know Momonosuke will be a big deal in the final war, so the nation of Wano will be involved. And Yamato is even seemingly forming her own crew on top of that out of the remnants of the Beast Pirates. So Oda is really building up Wano to have a huge faction of strong warriors in the final war. And then what about these other groups who may become allies in the end, such as Katakuri and the remnants of the Big Mom Pirates? What about Marco, Boa Hancock, and so on, all of these stray characters? Well, my thought is that if Oda is hypothetically going to try to get these characters in on the action as well in the final war, well, most of these characters listed don't make sense for defeating the core Blackbeard Pirate members, as those fights likely belong to the Straw Hats, and most of these characters don't really make sense as fighting core Celestial Dragon villains like the Gorosei either. So in this case, I think it's interesting to speculate on the possibility that Oda may look to bring back some past villains into the fray as side bosses for some of these side characters. For instance, could we see the Wano Samurai, this time led by Yamato and a stronger Momonosuke, get a rematch, this time against a weakened Kaido? Remember, Yamato is now making her own crew out of the remnants of the Beast Pirates officers, so the Wano faction is actually becoming even stronger. It is difficult to imagine who Yamato, Momonosuke, the Scabbards, and the former Beast Pirates would be fighting in the final war, but at the same time, they are a significant enough force that it's hard to imagine them not playing a role, so who really makes sense for them to face? I think a returned Kaido is an easy team effort option that Oda could write that would occupy all of these characters, and would actually carry narrative significance for them. And for the Big Mom Pirates, one of the most notable hanging threads for Katakuri in particular was that he always hoped that Big Mom would one day be defeated, as at the end of the day, the Charlotte family all lived in terror of their mother. If Katakuri is now going to take the reins of the Charlotte family and become their leader in the final arc, could it be possible that his final step forward would be leading the abused children to defeat their returned enraged mother? As such, maybe we see a parallel scenario of Yamato leading the Wano Samurai and the remnants of the Beast Pirates against her father, the revived Kaido, while simultaneously seeing Katakuri leading the Big Mom Pirates remnants against their mother, a revived Big Mom. I think this scenario could give a clear purpose to the two largest potential Straw Hat ally factions in the final war, and would make for a pretty unobtrusive way for Oda to bring back Kaido and Big Mom without having them steal the spotlight from the primary villains of the final war too much. Instead, using Kaido and Big Mom as side bosses for some of the more significant allied forces of the Straw Hats. So if you think Kaido and Big Mom could legitimately come back, let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video then definitely like and subscribe. And if you want to hear my extended thoughts on how this could even lead to Kaido's Zoan Awakening, then you can listen to my podcast that just dropped by either becoming a member or by supporting me on Patreon, link in the description below. And make sure to get your Surfshark deal today for less than $3 a month. Just go to surfshark.com/Morge or use code Morge for 4 extra months of Surfshark free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Link in the description below, or just scan the QR code.